Again, this is 100% wet, so this is good. We want to hear how the reverb is actually being affected. And then now I'm going to dial back my mix, and you're going to see how it blends together. Hey guys, welcome back. So we're going to learn how to program an ambient reverb delay with the reverb pedals built in. Okay, so I have a stock cab here. This is just the Fender Black Deluxe, okay, and I am not doing anything special here, so this is just stock so you guys can follow along. I took the treble down to 11% because the stock sounds is like too bright and tinny. But anyways, let's grab our reverb. We're gonna go to air reverb, and we're gonna go to ambient. So you can do reverbs, ambient reverbs with all these pedals, but I'm just gonna show you guys on this particular pedal, and I'm probably gonna do one video for each pedal. But let's go ahead and go right into it. So we have this. Off the bat, it's not bad at all. Now, I have a philosophy. First thing we're going to do is crank this mix to 100%. I'm going to explain why. If your reverb sounds crappy 100% wet, it's going to sound crappy when you dial it back. So you need to make sure your reverb sounds good 100%, then you dial it back because you know you're actually blending in a good source signal or a good effect signal. So let's go at these one by one. So mix is your blend, all right? That's how much of the source guitar sound is being blended with the reverb. So here's a dry. Right? And then here's wet. Okay, so 50% would mean that it's an even match as far as the distribution of the sound. Right? That means the reverb and the source guitar signal are at the same level, the shared, okay? So we're gonna crank this to 100% so it's all effect. Because we wanna understand how these parameters are affecting the sound. All right, so size is the next one. This is basically how close so far. So notice how when I crank the size down, and then when I crank the size up. So you can think of this as like the smaller it is, this is like a room or a studio, and then you got like a hall, and then you got all the way to like ethereal cloud 9, right? Since this is ambient, we don't want to be less than 50%, because what happens is when we go less than 50%, we're no longer in the ambient territory, and you'll hear the reverb pattern going on. It's funky. It's like a wah 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 wah. It's a weird sound because it's not meant to be a short decay. That's what, like, you know, you want to use the other reverb settings for that. So you want to be at 50% or more, and notice the difference. Okay, let's crank this all the way up. Sounds great. Okay, so the size, you choose your preference, 50 to 100%. It just depends on what you're trying to go for. If you're trying to do more of like a super patty cloud swell type thing, I can't swell because my pedal's up here. But yeah, so the size is just to help if you want to do something closer up or further away. If you're trying to do swells with the pedal, I'd recommend going with the higher size and a higher mix, but we'll get to more of that later. So that's what size is going to do. So let's go back to 50%. Hear that sounds one more time. Okay, and back to 100%. See, it's a much larger space. And you can always palm mute your guitar and whack it. You hear that? And then let's go to 50%. So you see it's just a smaller space. So depending on how ambient you want to get, you can crank it to 100. So let's just go 100 just because. Okay, so next tab is color. Now the easiest way to think of color is actually really simple. Dark and bright. That's it. I don't know why they called it color. Well, I guess color is accurate, but dark and bright. So if we have it up, this just lets us know that all of the frequencies of the reverb up to 20,000 hertz will be heard. So you hear how all the high pitched sound, and then if we take that out, that means only less than 91 hertz will be heard. You see that? Now, you might ask, how do you use this, right? How would you use this and why? Now, it's not a better than scenario. It's not, you know, bright is better and dark is better. No, it actually depends on what you're going for. So, for instance, if you're doing an ambient reverb and you want your notes to really like be shiny and sheen, then you want to have a high color, because then you hear how those top notes really ring out. You don't get that unless you have the frequencies cutting through. Now, if I take that away, it's not that you can notice that the top end is going to be much different. Now, that sounds very warm, creamy, and lush. Now, let me show you the difference. So, if I'm going for a reverb effect where I want more of an ambient type of cloud nine, ethereal, atmospheric type thing, I'm going to crank the color and I'm going to crank the size. I'm going to, because I want to hear that sheen. Now, if I'm actually trying to use this in a playing setting, I'm actually going to turn down the color. That way my notes stick out. Now, and that's where the mix knob comes in. Remember, this is your blend, so watch this. I'm going to pull this back to about 30%. Notice how the reverb does not get in the way of my notes. Notice how the reverb does not get in the way of the notes. That's because I have this color turned down. So what that is these high note frequencies are not competing with the reverb. Now watch how that gets lost once I crank this up. Now watch when I take it back away. And then I'm going to go ahead and take it even some more away. So notice how just by altering the color, it sounds like I'm messing with the mix, but I'm not. The mix hasn't changed. What changed is picking the frequencies that will be left in or out. So if you want your notes to stick out, you want to go darker. If you want your notes, if you want your notes to stick out, go darker. If you want the high notes to blend in, crank your color. Okay, so it's not better or either or. It's what are you trying to accomplish? So like when I'm just a lot of my reverbs have the color down dark because I love the way that it blends in. Right? That just sounds really smooth. Boom. So that's a really nice, delicious reverb sound. But if I crank this mix up, I can get more of a not non-playable, but more of like a pad type, and I'll crank this color up and do the same chords. So it's just different. It's just different. Now time is really self-explanatory. That's just how long will this decay go for. So if we shorten it up, you see that it goes really short. 1 second, and we can go 2, and then you see that. So unfortunately, I can't do my pedal because it's on my desk. But you guys are more than capable enough of being able to fade and fade out to hear what that sounds like. But that's it for today's tutorial. This is just to kind of give you a really nice overview how these effects work on the air reverb. So if you want to do an ambient tone for air reverb, pull that up, hit the ambient setting, and then start dialing in. Again, crank your mix so you can actually hear what your reverb sounds like. And then from there, dial it in. So if you know you're trying to play more with the reverb and have it as a tail, darken it up. Okay? And notice how when I darken this up, again, this is 100% wet, so this is good. We want to hear how the reverb is actually being affected. So 400 feels nice, okay? I'm going to dial back the time a little bit. And then now I'm going to dial back my mix, and you're going to see how it blends together. Boom. So that's that. Hope that was helpful for you guys. Once again, we just took an air reverb. We went to the ambient setting, and then we went ahead and learned how to use the mix size, color, and time to, dial in the sound we want. And then of course you can turn the tails on or off, or switching parameters and color your reverb. But that's that for this tutorial. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful and what other pedals you want me to go over. Appreciate y'all.